Alright everybody, how are we doing today? I found a more comfortable sitting position. Alright, so, another one from Ruptly. Russia-China joint bomber patrol meets Japanese and South Korean fighters, but missions will go on. So, Russian and Chinese strategic bombers have flown their first mission together over the Sea of Japan. And the East China Sea. Tokyo and Seoul are up in arms, but Moscow points out it's all within international rules and regulations. 2 Russian Tu-95Ms and 2 Chinese Xi'an XH bombers patrolled a pre-planned route above the Sea of Japan in the East China Sea, strictly in accordance with international law, the Russian Defense Ministry said in a statement. Even if it is in agreement with the law, that may not be the point. The point is that you suddenly just do an exercise with a bunch of these planes, and exercise for what? Like when North Korea complains about Americans and South Koreans doing the same, it kind of looks like a very aggressive sort of thing, you know? Sort of an aggressive exercise, like you're planning an attack. It sort of looks that way. At the very least, I think it is a legitimate reason to be nervous. And as much as I don't want to give North Korea anything, they have the right to be nervous when we and the South Koreans do it. So, just, give them reassurances if you're not planning to attack them. Just give them reassurances that you're not. Grant some insurance. But Seoul claims the bombers breached its air defense identification zone, also known as CADIZ. But Moscow insists this designation is not supported by any international rules and no third country's airspace was violated. In its own response to the intercept, Beijing reminded Seoul that its CADIZ is not the same thing as South Korean internationally recognized airspace, and is therefore not off limits to aircraft of other countries. The Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson also warned Seoul to be careful when using the word invasion. Well, certainly it's not a word that you want to use too liberally to mislead people into thinking it's something worse than it really is. It's just a very, it's a military exercise that is uncomfortably close to their airspace, and they have reason to be afraid. Which, again, just reassure them and grant some form of insurance. Shouldn't be too hard. The route apparently took the aircraft close to a set of tiny islands in the Sea of Japan known as the Dokdo Islands in South Korea and as Takashima in Japan, and contested by both nations. That's an interesting situation. They basically both hate each other because of the South Korean, the Korean occupation by the Japanese way back when. Yeah, I read the entire history of the peninsula and read about that. You read about that incident, you're just like... It just leaves you thinking, what the hell, Japan? Like, why? But both countries subsequently scrambled its military aircraft to ward off the bombers. South Korea also claimed that its jets had to fire warning shots, but Moscow insists these were only flares. Well, look, they may have overreacted to this maneuver. They may have indeed overreacted to fire warning shots or otherwise scare them off. Russia has accused the South Koreans of acting unprofessionally and of putting the safety of Russian bombers at risk by dangerously cutting across their path. The first ever joint patrol of the long-range aviation in the Pacific was the beginning of a wider program which aims to boost the ability of Russian and Chinese air forces to work together. Moscow says the planned program will continue at least through the end of 2019 and is not aimed against third countries. Well, you know what? Pick your battles. If they're going to act like that, then just don't do your aerial exercises in that area. It's not worth the fuss. Just back off. Pick your battles and do it someplace else. When you read about this kind of international news, you almost feel like the human race is filled with idiots. Filled to the brim with idiots. Just stay out of there unless they're going to see it as an act of war. Then you got to fight with Russia and China go up against South Korea and Japan. Which admittedly you would think Russia and China would probably win. But don't underestimate the South Korean resolve, especially if the United States decides to back them, which I think we would. And Japan is also one of our allies as well, which means we would back them as well. So Russia and China could potentially be screwed in their efforts in that regard. We'd probably bring our fancy planes and our Abrams tanks, and we'd support them at the border and start sending out flights. They wouldn't have an easy time of it. Anyway,